Hello and welcome back to the channel. More work to do today, this time just down here with a step or threshold to the house. As you can see, it's actually seen better days. But let's just take a step back to the beginning and find out why we started this piece of work. Fortunately, it's pretty obvious why we had to tackle this job, and also it was just one of those things that was so bad you just couldn't leave it or just couldn't patch it. You really had to take it apart and figure out what was wrong. And because it was in such a poor state, I could see straight away some screws that needed removing. Let's see if we can get this off. One down. Just because it was really wobbly and loose doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy to come off. Oh, they're coming out quite easily. Wasn't actually expecting that. But so far so good. And it's always nice to get some encouragement from the dog as well. Right, let's see if we can get this apart, try and figure out what's causing the problem. And always a good idea just to give a bit of assistance to get a pry bar, or as I have done here because it was right to hand, a large screwdriver, just to help lever some of the bits off. And I was obviously very conscious while doing this because the last thing I wanted to do was cause any more damage, although given how much some of this had actually rotten through, that really wasn't much of a concern. Well, that's actually in better condition than I thought it was going to be. Although in saying that, some of the bits of wood were clearly rotten through, as you can see, and certainly there was nowhere to repair or fill any of those, and they would just have to be replaced. So with that off, this is what we're left with, and yeah, a bit of the frame is a little bit rotted. I think we can sort that out. This part of the threshold is, well, I think you can see seen better days, but the actual step part of the threshold, for want of a better description, actually overall isn't too bad, although obviously needs a bit of a clear up. And we're going to have a little bit, well, you can't quite see right now, but I'll show you in a moment. Let's just move the door out of the way. We're going to have a little bit of work to do. There you go. On some of the render as well, some of the wall. So I've managed to find a replacement bit of wood to replace this rotten bit of the step. So I just need to combine these bits that were apart and see if we can cut a new bit. So I'm going to give myself a little bit extra wiggle room, and I think I'll probably cut this to about 90 centimetres. That's a few centimetres over. Just mark that up, because I can always reduce it later. Just if I need to trim it to fit. But hopefully that'll be about right. Right, with that done, I think we can get rid of that now. What we just need to do is clean up the step so we know what we're dealing with, because there's loads of sealant, there's a little bit of rotten wood on this, so we just need to clean that up so we know what we've got to do. trimmed the end off this, only a little bit, because what I'm trying to do is to get myself in a position whereby I can get this fitted, but whereby I don't have to take off the rest of the door frame. It's a little bit of a cheat, but hopefully we can get this securely fitted and then put the requisite filler in, redo some of the render, and it will be secured back in place. Let's just pull you in, because you can see here where obviously we've had some water ingress, and it's rotted off part of the step, and also as well just the bottom part of the frame. Now it's not looking too bad, I've got most of the loose bits off, so I'll treat that with some rot hardener and hopefully that'll do the trick. So with everything now back in place, all that was left to do was to fix it in place, and as part of the frame had now rotten out, what I decided to do was actually fix the step to the coarser bricks directly beneath. Now this isn't exactly the standard way of doing things, but the last thing I wanted to do was to actually replace the door frame. And I thought if I secured it in place well enough, filled it well enough, then actually this would be almost as good as new. And all you can see me here doing is using two different drill bits. One just for the wood, and just being very careful that I don't destroy that drill bit going through into the brickwork below, and then just using one specifically to drill through the bricks. And initially though, just marking the spot where I can then remove the step and drill through into the brickwork, and put some rule plugs in as well. So before we do anything else, let's just make sure the door shuts. So before putting any filler on, let's just put this wood treatment on to help deal with this rotten wood. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a couple of coats, put it on quite liberally, and then just give it a chance to dry. So what I've done is I've just put this piece of the threshold and sandwiched it back in between the main step and the replacement bit of wood behind it. Now hopefully we can secure that in place, but it's really difficult to judge what height it should be, given obviously we've got right bits of wood down here, and some of the steps actually been built up here. So I'm just trying to judge it from the back here and see if we can screw a couple of bits of wood together. Sorry for the wind, the weather's gone a bit downhill. Hopefully securing it in place. Don't think that's looking too bad. Do with this side being raised a little bit, I think. I think that's looking pretty good. Onto the filling part of the job then, which was absolutely critical, not just for aesthetics, but also as well just for use and stability and longevity, because obviously if this didn't work, then I would have to have a rethink and just take all this off and look at replacing the frame. But I was confident, even though it does look pretty bad on screen, but I was confident that if I applied this correctly and applied enough of it, then we could get back to having a solid step again. So this filler was just your typical two-part filler, specifically for exterior use, not for interior use, although I'm sure you could use it for interior wood, but not mixed use filler. So it was specifically designed for this type of job and was a total pig to work with, especially when it got hot. And I did have to do this over a number of days because I actually ran out of filler. And also, as you can probably tell right now, it's not really ideal trying to get into all the nooks and crannies while you've still got the door on. So I did actually take that off at a later point, just to help me make sure I could get it in all the places I had to. I wanted to build this up in layers just to really help with the curing time, because some of the areas that I did have to fill were actually quite deep. So with everything then filled, all that's left to do is then sand it back. And this is where it's key, because obviously you don't want to put on too much, but you want to put on enough. And I did have several goes at this just to basically build up those layers. And sometimes as well, when you sand things back a bit, you just find that things aren't as even as you'd hope they'd be. So there's no problem taking a couple of bites at it. And I found with this 2-part filler to give it at least half an hour before then sanding, just to give it enough chance to dry. But when it was hot, it actually seemed to dry in about 10-15 minutes, so you had to be really, really quick applying it. And although I could have left it whilst actually in the general vicinity and to fully repair around the step itself, may as well actually do the render too. And just what I'm trying to do here is just make it part of the wall, and obviously just fill in the gaps that I've got as well. I'm not trying to put a bump into the wall so it's obvious, but I will later on, as I'm going around painting the house, paint this too. So hopefully at that point it'll actually blend in an awful lot more. And so after all that effort, now onto the paint and a couple of coats of gloss just to give that finishing touch, and also as well protection to the wood. Now this isn't everything that needs to be done. Obviously got to put the door back itself, but also need to put in some trim pieces and also a bit of draft proofing too, just to seal everything up nice and tight. But fundamentally, this was the job done. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please subscribe, and I'll see you back on the channel very soon.